Welcome into your betting preview for this week's Sanderson Farms Championship. I'm Rick Gaiman, that right there, Andy Lacken. Andy, here we go. Full field event, 36-hole cut, starting to feel a little bit more like normal golf.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I enjoyed the hell out of the President's Cup, but I always feel kind of like everything is in its right place when we are dealing with a 156 man, 72 hole stroke play cut event. It's kind of just my sweet spot.
We're headed to Jackson, Mississippi, the country club of Jackson. We're looking right now, if you're watching on YouTube, at the odds checker grid. And no surprise that Sam Burns, the defending champion, the consensus best player in the field, is the favorite. The longest odds you can get on him, 11-1 at DraftKings. He's 10-1 mostly across the rest of the industry. And then there's a large gap, Andy, to Sahith Tagala at 20, Russell Henley at 25, JT Poston at 27, and Denny McCarthy at 28. So we've got a situation where there's one guy that odds makers are saying, yeah, this is the guy. Everybody else is in a different tier.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I was going through the numbers and modeling things out, and this really does remind me of what we had in Mexico earlier last year with Rahm. And actually, my numbers suggest that the gap, because Tony Finau played in Mexico too. Remember, the gap between Sam Burns and Sahith Theegala is actually greater than the gap that John Rahm had over some of the top end guys in Mexico. I really am that high on Sam Burns when you consider the fact that he's already won at this course before. It's just a really good course fit for him. And, his record at the President's Cup, in my opinion, personally, very misleading. I thought that he played
For sure.
great. I thought that he had kind of got the short end of the stick with some of the partnerships and some of the guys that he ran up against on the international side, just playing their exact best golf at the perfect time. Now, the issue that I have is 10-1. Do we really feel that confident in him? And I think the other question that I would ask you regarding Burns is, do you view him playing in the President's Cup as a positive or a negative? Because part of me says, man, he looked really good. He's got to be full of confidence. And the other part of me says he still might be hungover.
Yeah, and he played 5 matches, but he played them over 4 days. I'm not at all worried about Sam Burns this week. I just removed this morning Sebastian Munoz from the tournament predictor where I simulate the event 1,000 times because of his withdrawal on Monday. Pushed Sam Burns to a win percentage of 9.4%, which is kind of getting close to where you need that to be. The bigger thing that I have with Burns, Andy, is more of a macro conversation about the state of golf betting. 9 of the last 16 winners are 20-1 or shorter, which is a trend that I would normally blow off. I would say, yeah, it's going to even itself out eventually, but I do think a lot of it is tied to the live guys that left, and they took their 3% win equity from the middle of the board every single week and they bounced. And we are seeing a lot more guys at the top cash it in. And I'm like starting to get worried that this is not necessarily a trend and something that we're going to see more of in the future.
And this golf course kind of complicates things further because you have Sam Burns win here last year at 10-1, but this is also a golf course where, around 41% of strokes gained last year came with the flat stick. Like, that falls pretty firmly in the putting contest zone. And you look historically at the winners, even when Sergio won, he was 70-1, Munoz 70-1, Cameron Champ 125, Ryan Armour 125. Cody Gribble plus one over 100-1. Nick Taylor was 400-1, right? So you kind of have this interesting push and pull with that has been a like strong recent trend. And there's probably enough of a sample size there for us to say, you know what, there's really something here. But this is also a golf course. Any golf course where Cody Gribble and Peter Malnati and Ryan Armour can compete is not a golf course necessarily that does the best job of separating elite tee to green play from weaker tee to green play. This is not a Torrey Pines where you could argue that a third of the field is dead on arrival. So
Right.
it's tough for me. To kind of answer the original question, I will not be on Burns at 10-1. DraftKings much different story for me, but I'm still probably living in that middle tier for better or worse. And I kind of need to get kicked in the face just a couple more times by those 10-1 guys before I start changing up my whole strategy.
All right. Well, you might get a kick in the face this week. I agree with you. I don't know if I'll get there on Sam, but my face is starting to hurt a little bit, and I'm starting to worry about the kicks. Worth noting before we move down to this next tier, there are some pretty big discrepancies out there in the industry. If you're looking at the grid, Denny McCarthy as short as 18-1, as long as 28. JT Poston, if you want to talk about putting contests with these two, as short as 16-1, as long as 27-1. So if you're in a place where you can shop it, definitely worth doing that. As we enter the 30s, the 40s, and even just in front of the 50s, this is a lot of names here, Andy, and guys that have been playing well in Scott Stallings and Taylor Montgomery, guys that have figured out the worst part of their game. I'm looking at you, Emiliano Grillo. We've got Christian Bezadenhout here. We've got Thomas Dietrich. Like, what? It's a grab bag here. So what are we grabbing?
Huge range. For me, there's two guys in this range that I really like, and I've already bet. The first one's Davis Riley. I just think it's a good buy low opportunity for Riley. Just kind of out like a from a bird's eye view. I really like looking at, okay, am I buying this guy at a very low price? Am I buying him at a very high price? And I think we have a nice opportunity with Riley, a guy that probably, if he made the cut and played well at Fortinet, would be in the Sahith range. And he missed the cut because, as you see on the screen, he lost close to like 8.5 strokes short game and putting, right? And it's I think sometimes we take it too far with the, oh man, if this guy could only putt. Like, I get it, but Davis Riley hit the ball statistically better than Taylor Montgomery did last week. And Taylor Montgomery is higher in the odds now and finished third because he gained 11 strokes putting, whereas Davis Riley is a guy that almost won Colonial, almost won in Mexico, almost lost in a playoff to Sam Burns at the Valspar, right? So I just think it's a pretty good buy low opportunity on Davis Riley here.
Yeah, I'm certainly in agreement there. The other name that I've already clicked is Emiliano Grillo. Like, when you turn into a good putter, now 6 straight events in which Grillo has gained strokes with the flat stick. He finished 25th at the Fortinet, which is more than a respectable finish. Like, I'm just going to keep going back to you until something tells me otherwise here.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Grillo is like, yeah, I think he ended the season last year gaining over a stroke putting in 4 or 5 straight starts. I don't know if that's enough of a sample size for us to say that he really has that fixed, but I always love when players that we know are good at something start to figure out the thing that has always been their biggest bugaboo. And with Grillo, I've always trusted that his ball striking is good enough to win on the PGA Tour, right? I mean, he is pretty consistently one of the better iron players, and he's good off the tee too. Um, at least as at least in this field, right? So the fact that he's figured out the putter is encouraging. The other guy that I want to throw out before we go a little bit farther down is Thomas Dietrich. And
Yep.
I'm a big sample size guy, Rick. I'm not generally a guy that, likes to try and be early on somebody if I don't need to. But I think it's a different case with Dietrich because Dietrich's a guy who's been around the block a lot on the PGA Tour. And you have Rick Run Good up there. My favorite part of the website is now that you guys have Euro stats, which is
Yeah. How about
actually really, for better or worse, I'll be blaming it on you if the Dietrich thing doesn't work out. But now getting a look at all those Euro stats, I mean, this is a guy that is pretty dominant off the tee, right? And he
that?
showed it at the Fortinet last week. And he's also the type of player that, like, one thing that I like to look at, Rick, is do you have the ability to spike in all 4 categories, right? Because if you have that ability and you time it up in the same week, that is a win, right? And Dietrich is the off the tee is the best, but he's also had some really good approach weeks mixed in there. He can get hot with the putter. He's not a bad putter by any means. Even the short game has had some great weeks as well. So Dietrich was kind of the other guy in this range that I was looking at as well.
Yeah, he's exciting. And as we continue to roll down the grid, I start to find some more question marks. And I think even odds makers would agree. Like Seamus Power, for example, if you're looking at the grid, as short as 37, as long as 50. So I skew probably cooler on Sheamus than most. I'm like a 4 out of 10, but if you're a 6 or a 7 out of 10 on Sheamus, you can get a 50-1 hanging on him out there somewhere. I don't know if you have any strong feelings about him or anybody else as we kind of step into the back half of this board.
Yeah, I would say I'm about a 4 out of 10 on Sheamus as well. I'm like concerningly like a 7.58 out of 10 on my boy Gary Woodland,
That is
who
concerning, yes.
yeah, who lost like had one of his worst off the tee performances in about a year and a half
Mhm.
compared with one of his best approach weeks in the season, and on a golf course like Jackson where there's not a giant penalty for wayward driving. It's kind of a course where you can it's one of the straightest courses on the PGA Tour, and you can hit driver on every hole, and they water these greens. They're pretty receptive. Like, I am going to be more inclined to favor the approach play. And, Woodland is a guy. Would he be the first major winner to come in at 60, 70-1 and kind of at a depressed price and win the Sanderson Farms? He would not. Sergio Garcia fit a somewhat similar profile to Woodland a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So I think, again, it's a decent opportunity for Woodland, who is just a better player at 60-1 than some of the guys that he's priced around.
Yeah, that 60 is the best number available. It's at DraftKings. I've kind of stopped my outrights well before this, but I do think that there are some interesting names when it comes to like the finishing position markets. Will Gordon is 100-1. He might be back in great form. Davis Thompson as short as 80, as long as
Yes.
125. I'm a Thompson truther. I don't necessarily think he's going to win, but I'll have exposure to him in some of these finishing position markets that are driven by these outright numbers. So I think I'm in that frame of mind when I'm at this portion of the board, Andy. But how are you kind of assessing the long shots?
Yes. In on Thompson, by the way. I haven't made any bets down here. I'll probably add one or two guys at longer odds. I will say, just a quick plug of the podcast too. I had Luke Caddy on this week, Jeff Willett. And Luke does love this place. He's finished fourth here before. I don't know if he'll end up making my outright card, but I think he is an intriguing option for DFS. He hasn't been playing great, but his caddy swears by, and not like he's biased at all, but his caddy
Right.
swears that the putting, even though the stats aren't really showing it right now, that he sort of kind of started to find something on the green. So he's another name that I have interest on from a finishing position standpoint. But yeah, Davis Thompson. We can, depending on how low you want to get, there's some guys like Austin Smotherman and Ben Taylor that I like as kind of
Right.
super deep long shots. But yeah, I haven't made any bets down here as of now.
Okay, let's talk about the matchup market because I do think there are some intriguing options. I have DraftKings up right now, which, okay, by the way, they've spelled Taylor Montgomery's name wrong. So what you could do, here's the life hack. You bet on Keegan Bradley. And then if Taylor Montgomery wins, you say, no, no, no. It wasn't Taylor Montgomery, the guy in the golf tournament. You had some other guy listed. Keegan definitely beat him. And then you dispute it and you win either way.
Yeah,
That's the
judging
life hack.
judging how DraftKings has typically been with customer complaints regarding a lot of their interfaces and stuff with the draft, with the sports book and the daily fantasy side of things. I'm not sure how much I would count on that, but I actually do like the Keegan side of that matchup. Like, I'm, for better or worse, I'm going to fade somebody who gained 11 strokes putting 10 times out of 10, which is what
Yeah.
Montgomery did. And probably around, I don't know, 25-30% of the time, I'll maybe really regret that decision and get burned. But that is for me like a betting 101. Is this guy overvalued based on a somewhat fraudulent way to his last finish? Yes, that is like the most like number one betting 101 thing for me. So that is a matchup that I would definitely have some interest on the Keegan side.
Yeah, Keegan plus 100 to Taylor Montgomery's minus 130. There are a couple of interesting. So you were kind of talking about buying low on potentially it was who were we talking about here? Uh
Davis Riley.
Davis Riley. Okay. And kind of looking at like that longer term stuff. Well, Russell Henley, I think, kind of falls into that category for me where 100 round Russell Henley is way better than like 24 round Russell Henley. And he's had 5 weeks off. So if I think maybe he gets back to 100 round Russell Henley, he is way, way, way better than Christian Bezuidenhout. And it's minus 130 to plus 105 on Bez's side. But like that's a guy that I don't know how books or if books do a good enough job of saying this is what he's been doing recently, but now you add in the time off. You know he's been in Georgia. You know he's been working on stuff. You know he's been resting. Like that, I'm quite interested in a Henley matchup exposure.
Yeah, I really like Russell Henley too. He was actually under some consideration for me as an outright, and I still have room for him if that's a direction that I decide to go down. But yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I kind of wanted to do a deeper dive on this, but the week kind of just got away from me. The Sanderson Farms is like the second event of the fall swing. So I would be curious to see in the past how many times the winner of this event needed to play the Fortinet, right?
Mm,
Versus, if it's their first start of the season, because some of the guys that didn't play the Fortinet, I've been trying to figure, like, do I like the guys that played at the Fortinet better? Do I like the guys that didn't play better than the guys that played bad at the Fortinet? Like, I haven't quite figured out how I feel about that. And Russ kind of had a slower end to the season. But you're right. If you start to look at his long term baseline, Henley is unreal on Bermuda. He is probably the best wedge player in this field, and you're still going to have a fair amount of wedges on this course despite its length. And I think that in the matchup market, there is a lot of value on him based on the guys that they have matched up against him.
right. So I plugged this into the head-to-head matchup tool. 100 round baseline for both Henley and Bezuidenhout. I have Henley winning it about 55.5% of the time, which is very close to the actual money line that DraftKings is posting right now. But what you'll notice is, I mean, he gains strokes to the field. He gains one or more strokes to the field, two or more, much more frequently than Bezuidenhout does. And on a golf course like this, I don't know. I just think the path is much wider for Henley at the top of the board. So definitely some exposure there. You can get how about this? Two of your guys against one another. Gary Woodland, Alex Smalley, minus 110 each.
Yeah,
Tough
shout
swing
out
for you.
Duke as usual.
Mhm.
Alex Smalley he's like, I'm find some way to get exposure to him every single week. He's another kind of macro buy for me. And he is a very frustrating player, but I think that if you stick around with him, he does have the upside to win on the PGA Tour even this year. That would probably be a one that's like trying to pick between my two children. I'd probably stay away there. But Svensson, do we got anything on my boy Svensson? Another macro buy for me. That's a guy that I've just been totally. Oh yeah, there he is against Brendan Steele down at the bottom. Yes,
There you
Steele
go.
versus
Minus
Svensson.
110. Yeah.
Talk about two guys that I've just been burning
Oof.
a hole in my pocket with Steele and the putting and stuff. But that's another intriguing one. I will definitely have some exposure to Svensson this week.
Watching Brendan Steele putt is horribly painful. But you know what's sick about that? At least for me, I don't know about you, Andy. I would love to putt like Brendan Steele, right? I would
Yeah.
love to putt like Lucas Glover. I would love to putt like Luke List. Like all these scrubs that get lapped every single week and just hemorrhage strokes on the greens. I would love to putt. I would die to putt like any of them.
That's another thing I was talking about with Luke's caddy. Like if you look at his his like approach putting, which is another stat that Rick Run Good has, and kind of just like how he does on putts over 25 feet. Like if you played around with him, his touch is unbelievable. The reason why he, comparatively speaking, hemorrhages strokes on the green is because his make percentage from 4 to 8 feet is lower than tour average. Honestly, it's a make percentage that I would probably sign for as like a 4 or 5 handicap, which just
Right.
puts in perspective how good these guys are. But yeah, I mean, we make it incredibly, we act like it's incredibly frustrating when these guys do what they do. But I think people forget sometimes that like a basically like a 7-foot putt is like a 50-50 proposition on the PGA Tour, and we act like they should go in every single time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, even like the best putters on like Denny McCarthy makes 8-footers like 57% of the time or something like that, and
Right.
he's by far the best in the world.
Right. Right. It's our standards are kind of a little out of whack there.
Yes. We need to talk one and done. We've got one event under our belts, and of course, we got a chalk winner. But we are going to do that after a quick word about Andy's podcast. Andy Lack is one of the nerdiest golf guys that I know, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. His knowledge of course architecture allows him to create some of the most actionable course previews available, and he offers up pure expertise on his own podcast, the Inside Golf Podcast. Twice a week, he offers course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategy for every PGA Tour event, and he expands the universe by bringing on entertaining and knowledgeable guests who can offer a different viewpoint of the game that we love. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts. And we're back. Andy, Luke List-Cat, you've already teased it. You are rocking and rolling on that pod. I'm loving everything.
You know, we're starting to get into more like cool interviews, which is nice. I've been starting to make that switch. I have a great Ireland podcast coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to do a lot of Band and Dunes content as well. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. It was quite fun to get to talk to his caddy and check it out. Inside Golf Podcast.
One and done. So Armina has the slide here. Can we? Thank you much. Okay, so this is from the Fortinet. I cannot remember who either one of us picked, but I got 55,000 and you got 16,000. Do we remember?
I picked Taylor Pendrith.
Okay, and I think I had Emiliano Grillo. That sounds right. Okay,
right.
So Pendrith and Grillo, 55,000 to 16,000. This is the first time I have had a lead in our one and done in probably over a year. It might be longer than that.
Yeah, you know, it might, and quite the pillow fight that we had. And
Yes.
I imagine, I haven't checked the standings, but the worst in one and done, especially when you're in a big league, is when, like, I picked Cam Davis, who in our big run and done league, who missed the cut, and it's like I have to imagine that, I don't know, a fair amount of people picked Max Homa.
37 out of 800. I thought it was going to be more than that, but
Me
I
too.
believe he was. Oh boy, I don't know how to find it quickly. I think he was definitely one of like the higher owned golfers. I believe
Had to be. I mean, he should have been, and I tried to zag somewhat. It wasn't really much of a
No.
zag with
Maybe
Cameron
I'm
Davis, probably
confused.
more.
I'm confused here. So Pendrith was by far the most popular in the run and done, 22%. Grillo was 10. McNeely, Davis, Sahith, Steele, Homa was only 4.5%.
Wow. So I guess it's
scrubs. What a bunch of scrubs we play with. How is he only 4.5%? Neither of us had him, but how is he only 4.5%?
right. No, that's a true, you know, overthinking it situation. I think that all of us are guilty on it. You know, I think just to discuss strategy and I'll dovetail it with my pick and ours. I think this is a week where, again, like, there is no need for you to get super cute, right? Sam Burns is an interesting one, right? Sam Burns is really the only guy you could kind of talk me into Russell Henley. Sam Burns is the only guy where you could say, I really want to save this guy for a bigger purse, but I don't think there's going to be another tournament on the schedule where Sam Burns has of high of a win probability as he does this week. I considered him for our one man, for our 1v1. I think I'm probably going to go with Henley, but do you see any merit in some of the bigger leads maybe rolling out Burns here?
I do. So I think that there is enough of, hey, I could save Burns. Hey, I wonder if he's still hungover. Hey, I have everyone available to me. I think there's enough of those three sentiments that Sam Burns is not outrageously picked in a larger one and done. I think he's going to be the most popular, but I don't think it's going to be super outrageous. We've got Taylor Montgomery love. We've got Sahith love. If you think it's going to be a putting contest, Denny McCarthy and JT Poston are both sub 20-1. I think there's enough of that to keep Burns somewhat reasonable, all things considered. So I'm okay rolling him out in something bigger.
Over under 10% in the run and done.
Over.
You think? I was
Yeah.
gonna go under. I'm honestly I'm very curious to see where it played out. Maybe my perspective is colored a bit by the fact that Homa was,
Yeah.
4 or 5%. But it's interesting. There is groupthink kind of takes hold for some reason or another. And like there is that guy, Pendrith was 21% last week. Who do you think the best candidate this week is to be 20%?
Montgomery. Taylor
You
Montgomery.
think?
Yeah, and you're right. Everyone. Okay, the other thing about one and done is if everyone wants to be like the really smart guy in the moment,
Yeah.
right? Which is like Taylor Pendrith. What have I seen from Taylor Pendrith that deserves he's the guy in Napa, and I liked him, right? But like, oh, why don't I just play by far the best player in the field and the defending champion Max Homa, right? Like if we would make picks 6 months in advance for a lot of people, that would probably end up being better. So there's definitely this prisoner of the moment thing that happens every single week. And I believe that is Montgomery this week.
Yeah, I think what happens is everybody wants to not pick the most obvious guy, so they pick what they think is the sneaky guy, but actually is the most ends up being the most obvious guy, which is Pendrith last week. Could be Montgomery this week. I would throw out Sahith as well as
Yeah.
another. I think everybody loves, like, no one likes, and it's the same thing with DraftKings with the highest price player. No one likes the highest price player. They like to justify it in their heads as like, okay, I'm not going to pick the most obvious guy. I'm going to pick the second most obvious guy. And I think this week, even on the odds boards too, you can make a case that guy's Sahith. You could make a case it's Montgomery. I think maybe JT Poston will probably get some love this week. I won't give away my run and done pick, but for us, I'm going to rock with Russell Henley.
Okay, I'll just play Sam Burns. I'll just no reason for me to beat around the bush. I'll play Sam Burns. I would have really liked. Who I would have liked to have played was Sebastian Munoz.
Yeah, me too. Who another guy like looked really good for the international team. If I like my biggest criticism for Trevor Immelman was probably not giving Munoz more run in that President's Cup. His singles match with Scheffler was pretty electric. Like when he gets hot, he gets absolutely scorching hot. So yeah, bummer to see him not here this week.
Yeah, he was 2-0-1 and past champion, and withdrew on Monday morning, which is stinks because I would have liked to play. I would have because he would have been the guy that I would have said, okay, in a larger one and done, don't pick Burns. Let everybody go to Montgomery. Let everybody go to Sahith and play Sebastian Munoz, and I would have been happy with that. But
Right. Hopefully we get him back. Now, are you going to Vegas? Are you going to go to Summerlin next
oh
week?
yeah, yeah, I'll be out
Yeah.
there basically all week. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It's
Hell
gonna be
yeah.
awesome. I can't wait. They redid. I don't know if they actually I gotta find out. I know they at least like resodded everything. All new fairways, all new greens. It's been shut down
Mm.
for 6 months. I don't know if they like added any tee boxes or anything like that, but it's all like that place has been closed since April.
Well, I'm the big agronomy guy. So let me know
Yeah,
if you
I'll
find
send some
anything
texts
out.
today. Yeah, I'll send some
Yeah.
texts today, find out what they did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited for that. It'll be good. Vegas and it usually gets a decent field. I mean, like Sung Jae's the past champ. We'll probably get him. Cantlay comes sometimes. Victor generally comes. It gets like a decent
Does
field.
Victor come? Yeah, we'll miss.
Yeah.
I know another guy who has won there before and been good there that we'll miss this year is Bryson, unfortunately.
Yeah, and
Um,
the other problem is going to be so I think it was each of the last 2 years that there was back-to-back weeks in Vegas. Remember, they did the CJ Cup
mhm.
at Shadow Creek, and then they did it at um, Summit.
Yep.
And that was a really good excuse for guys to be like, okay, well, obviously I'm going to go because I'm going to play both of these. So like Rory was at Summit Club. He didn't play Shriners, but like Vegas got like they got a lot of guys because they were going to end up playing back-to-back weeks. I don't know how that schedule without that event is going to impact who
The
comes there.
field, right?
Yeah,
Because if I'm correct, it goes after Vegas. They're going back to South Carolina
right.
because it's going to
Congaree.
be at Congaree, right? Which is
Yeah,
kind of interesting to have on the schedule. They're on in the southeast and they go all the way west, but whatever.
we'll see. Andy Lack available on Twitter at ADP Lack Sports. No, ADP. What is it? ADP
80
Lack Sports.
ADP
Yeah.
lag sports. Yeah.
I don't know why my brain, I've said that 400 times. My brain just malfunctioned. ADP Lack Sports. You can find me at RickRunGood. This has been your betting preview for this week's Sanderson Farms. Good luck.